Emotions they're just messengers. They're communicating with you. You're going to feel it everywhere in your body, in your nervous system. And that's because the brain starts to release a lot of cortisol and adrenaline. The brain tells you basically, okay, there's a bit of danger there. But it doesn't have to be like that. You can break that cycle. Of course, we will always have anxiety and stress because we're wired that way.
Do you think there's a lot of people almost being held back?
So you can change that by...
Hi, Silvia. Welcome to the show today. Let's start just by learning a little bit about you. What do I need to know?
Hi, Matt. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Pleasure.
I'm really excited about this chat. My name is Silvia Freeman. I am a health and wellbeing facilitator. I'm a consultant, and I work with businesses. So I help employees to kind of manage their emotions and make sure they feel regulated and knowing how to manage their stress levels, all that kind of things. But I also work with carers, working carers, and I've been doing this for quite a long time now, over 7 years. So
Okay.
that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about managing emotions because I guess that's the one of the key parts from the fact that we all get various different emotions, and it's almost like those things just happen, but it's how we manage it rather than trying to prevent any emotion ever
Mm.
creeping in.
Absolutely. So I specialize in the emotional well-being and the reason why I do that because I used to suffer from depression and I used to be always moved by these, like we all do, by these massive emotions and I just never really understood what do I supposed to do with what I'm feeling. I grew up in Slovakia. You know, I was never taught about emotions or mental health and all that kind of stuff. So it was just I felt very lonely. I used to feel very lonely kind of in my existence and just was always moved by these different emotions. But then I think when I was about 20 years old, and when I moved from Slovakia to the UK, I really was kind of hungry to see that knowledge. I really needed to understand how the body brain works, so I can kind of get a good grip of these emotions and know what to do with them. And that's exactly what I did. I studied the different modalities such as NLP, neuro linguistic programming, emotional freedom technique, and then later on breathwork. I've learned how to, like, what is it that we need to do with these emotions. And so I learned that you kind of have to become very aware of what you're feeling. And then if it's something, because emotions they're just messengers. They're communicating with you. They're telling you if like, is someone crossed my line and I need to maybe speak up, but I feel the fear? Or is this something like my nervous system is just responding to a body language? So understanding, what is this emotion, what is this about, is this something I need to look into and deal with, or is it just, okay, someone looked at me a little bit weirdly and it's got nothing to do with me. So recognizing, what am I feeling, and get curious, do I need to go a little bit deeper into this, or can I just find a way how to regulate? So when I say regulation, it's about, I'm feeling something, I'm hit by some kind of fear or self-doubt. Okay, right, I'm feeling the emotion is like rising and I'm feeling the physical symptoms. okay, it's time to pause, breathe through this. For me, tapping is the most effective way. And I really do it, not just with my clients, but as, a business owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot of tapping. So I just get very curious about, right, okay, I'm feeling this anxiety. What is this inner voice telling me? And I'll just go and kind of go into the emotions, and 2-3 rounds of tapping, the anxiety completely just kind of lowers. I actually feel like the adrenaline and cortisol starts to lower, because when you're anxious, when you're feeling something intensely, you're going to feel it everywhere in your body, in your nervous system. And that's because the brain starts to release a lot of cortisol and adrenaline, because it just, the brain tells you basically, okay, there's a bit of danger there.
Mm.
But you obviously know you're not in danger. So the tapping is really helpful, because it calms your brain and the nervous system. You can say the phrases that, like, I'm feeling anxious, feeling whatever you feel. And it just really comes right back down into a level where you feel, okay, I'm feeling calm now. It was just, just an email.
Yeah. Is that one of the issues we've got now? I mean, we're talk about tapping and things like that, but that it's almost like a false negative, that the system that our body has is designed to keep us safe, and it's that fight and flight and things like that. But actually the world around us is sending us signals that,
Right.
that they're not life and death, but yet our body sort of interprets it. And like
Yeah,
you say, that trying to work out what that emotion is, and is this a real threat? Because there might be times when there is a real threat and you need your body to react, but
absolutely.
equally there's many times when it isn't a real threat and your body has sort of misinterpreted it.
Yeah. And then it's important to calm yourself down and bring yourself back into a balance. Because then, if you don't, if you go, okay, I don't want to feel this right now, well, the anxiety is just going to get more and more intense every day. And it just kind of piles up in your body, creates a lot of kind of like heat, and
Hmm.
it's just a poison into your whole system. And then you can't think properly. But also, it's quite addictive as well. That
Okay.
anxiety can
Yeah.
feel a bit, that's why some people don't feel like they want to let go of, or know how to manage these stressful situation and emotions, because they kind of, it's like on a loop. The emotion grows, and when we don't deal with it, it's just there. And so we create like a loop, and
Okay.
it creates your, over time, the feelings, emotions then create your personality. Then you're like, oh, I'm just an anxious person. But it doesn't have to be like that. You can break that cycle. Of course, we will always have anxiety and stress, because we're wired that way. But what I do is I show people how you can manage it, so you're not like imprisoned by all these massive feelings, but you acknowledge the emotion. You know how to regulate. Um, you know how to process it, and so then you can function better. You can perform better.
Was
That
going to
makes
say, what are some of the sort of negative consequences of not dealing with these emotions? You said, it builds up and we almost become stuck in this loop, but I know you work within businesses and with
Yeah,
people to help them manage it. What then happens in someone's, say, working life or even personal life if these emotions aren't managed?
burnout. Like, you're totally heading toward burnout. Also, because every emotion, negative, positive, let's talk about the negatives, release chemicals, right? So then it's, over time, when we don't deal with these feelings, you can develop a lot of diseases. So when your body feels inflamed, internally, when you get gut issues and
Yeah.
you get eczema, and that's because these emotions will eventually do that. You will become ill. So burnout, physical symptoms like obviously, eczema or whatever the body kind of will, you know, what to say, give.
Yeah.
And you just can't seem to focus or be productive or just yeah, kind of, you're always kind of drifting into the past, or so these are like the quite big, I'd say, consequences: the burnout, the physical symptoms, not being able to focus or produce something. You just feel like, yeah, trapped.
Yeah. I can see that, and you do see it in people who are they're worn out, physically and mentally, and you say, "Oh,
Exhausted.
you don't look well,"
Yeah, not
and things like.
sleeping well, you're not functioning well, you're not eating well. So people don't realize that, yeah, like when we don't deal with the feelings, the emotion, it will have a huge impact. You know, mental health. What is mental health? I think to me, it's about like how you dealing with your inner world. Would you say?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the.
How you dealing with your mind, with the thoughts that you're thinking every day? If you're not conscious of what I'm thinking, if you're on autopilot, because that's what the brain does, it will only give you the negative, right? The worst case scenario. So you almost have to become really aware of, okay, I'm spiraling down, right? I'm interrupting this pattern. But do you know what I mean? You always
Yeah.
go and interrupt the pattern. So that's part of my work. Like, I teach people, right? No, not this way. You want to do well, you want to achieve something really cool, you want to be productive. Let's interrupt the
Because
pattern.
our brain works on sort of, repetitive tasks and,
Yeah,
habits and things like that, doesn't it? So I guess, yeah, if you're not managing these emotions, it will almost just default to
yeah,
something it's done before and present it in the same way. So you're saying the first thing to do is you've got to recognize the emotions and the cycle, and then secondly, interrupt it.
absolutely. And whether that be, obviously I teach tapping and do breath work, there are a lot of different things that you can do to regulate. But yeah, for me, tapping is the really fastest one. So yeah, and like, get quiet, understand, okay, I'm feeling, and if you can't do it when you're at work, because that could be difficult, you know, you can do this, like, I don't know, if you take yourself for a break, breathe through it. Okay, I'm understanding, I'm acknowledging, okay, I'm feeling this. And when you have time, and it's something really important, the what you're feeling, just process it by doing the tapping and allow the emotion to move through you. And then you're like, okay, I can carry on.
What is the basics of tapping then? Talk me through that and how
Yeah.
someone would maybe get started. Maybe they haven't heard of it before, or perhaps have but
Mhm.
never tried it. Where would they start?
So tapping emotional freedom technique, it's a combination of two things: the modern psychology and the older, the Chinese medicine, not medicine, Chinese acupressure,
Okay, yeah,
acupuncture. And how it works is you're basically tapping on different meridian points on the body, mostly at the upper part of the body, but we're also tapping under the armpit, top of the head. So when you're tapping, when you're anxious, okay, and you want to like calm yourself down and process the emotion, release. you start tapping on different points, and what that does is when you're tapping, you're sending the signal to your brain, to the part of the brain that controls the fight or flight. Because when we said early on, when you're stressed, you're going to feel the fight or flight. You're in a fight or flight.
Yeah.
Cortisol starts to flood your body. So you start tapping, and that signal enters the brain, and it basically turns off the stress response. So you
Okay.
you 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 start tapping on different points, also phrasing what you're feeling. So that's the acknowledgement, and the brain gets the message. So we're not in danger. We're just feeling these emotions, but we're actually quite safe here. So the brain gets the message because you're stimulating the part of the brain that controls the fight or flight. So you're kind of breaking through that cycle, and the brain is then it goes, okay, I'm going to start lowering the cortisol, and it puts you into a nice balancing state where the brain actually starts to release endorphins and serotonin. So after 1, 2 rounds of tapping, you're going to feel pretty chilled.
Okay, so it's pretty much sort of, reminding the brain that you're in charge and we're
Absolutely.
safe and you
You're taking
don't need to
the
worry
charge.
about this.
Yes. Yeah. You taking the charge of how you want to feel. So, and it's training. You're training your brain. The more you can do these, practices, the more you can regulate yourself, uh, the better you come at kind of bouncing back from challenges and adversities, because your brain, you know what to do. Of course, we're still going to have stress and anxieties, challenges, but this is a really great regulation, and it's fast. That's why I love it. And it's backed by science, by the way. So
Yeah,
we're
because
not.
I've heard of, when people talk mental health, actually, I've heard of sort of mental fitness and mental
Yeah,
resilience. And that's the fact that, exactly like you were saying, we will always have stress in our life. It's just how we deal with it and then how we bounce back. Because I'm sure other people have experienced, and I certainly have, something goes wrong in the morning and that's it. It's almost ruined your entire day. Um, but actually, it doesn't have to be that way. You can almost, right, okay, settle back down and start again.
yeah, but it's simple, isn't it? So simple, and we don't do it.
No.
It's like, it's so easy. How can this possibly work? Well, it does. It really saved me.
Yeah, because you're saying
Really
that,
saved
you were quite low at times. You were depressed and
I was, and like as soon as I found these different techniques, I was like, okay, I understand now that I get to choose. I get
yeah.
to choose how I want to feel. I get to regulate, because this 2 million old brain, um, it's going to always be in that state of survival. So I have to interrupt that. And if I want to, um, do great things, you kind of have to.
Yeah, I guess our brains are, have been developed to keep us safe and survive. And actually, modern life has changed particularly quickly, hasn't it? You look back the last 100 years, how the world has changed, but our brains haven't really caught up with that,
No,
have they? Do you
no,
think that sort of modern life is, in part, causing some of the problems?
I think so. We're moving way too fast. And to be honest with you, I do the tapping, and, I facilitate these workshops. I feel it too. Like I'm like, wow, over, like overstimulated, and just, it's just crazy. So if I can help someone else, and obviously, you know, by teaching people how you can regulate your nervous system and how you can look after your mental health. If I could just do that for one person, then I feel like, okay, I'm doing good here. I always been interested in how people feel. I don't know, it's just my thing. Kind of sense how people are feeling. It comes from my childhood, I think. Um,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, often, there are things within our childhood that then develop into later life. And clearly you've got something there that, you just want to help other people. Um, but equally you're helping yourself as well. And you helped yourself first. And I think that's often something many of us get wrong. We're always very good at sort of pleasing other people, helping other people, doing it for other people. But actually we need to get ourselves right first, putting on your own oxygen mask, I guess.
absolutely. I don't think I would want to do. I don't think I'd be doing this work if I've not, gone through all the challenges and then found these different techniques that helped me to deal with my own, nervous system and trauma and the fight or flight and really understand. And I really understood that okay, this is really transformative work, and I could see how it could benefit people in the workplace because I think I mentioned to you I worked for Network Rail, and I brought all of this into the corporate, and it's a male-dominated organization, and I was like, oh my god, how are they going to receive this? No, but they did, and I was doing quite well with it. And this was before we had mental health first aiders. Um, so yeah, it made a huge difference in my job. Yeah, where I was. Yeah, that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It made a massive difference to how people manage their mental health, especially through COVID. Um, yeah,
COVID was a massive part, and I think we have seen, coming out of that, many more people
yeah,
talking about, their mental health, and organizations and businesses starting to take it a little bit more seriously, because traditionally we've always spoken about productivity, hitting targets, high performing teams and things like that, and we seem to have at one point always just looked at new training or metrics or something to motivate people, yeah, tick boxes, but actually if people are feeling good in themselves,
yeah,
they're almost automatically going to be able to
yeah.
perform at a much better rate without anything else. So it is just about looking after yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something like entering the corporate world now as I'm self-employed can sometimes be well, it's tough, right? We're self-employed, finding a new clients and all of that. And I always kind of explain how it works when I'm dealing with corporates, how it works, the return on investment, and how it will benefit the whole team. And they are only very recently, companies are like, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, can you train us? Can you train our mental health first aiders? So it's good to I it just lights up my soul when I see like, okay, blimey, they're getting it. They're getting it now. Like, okay, this is good. But I always have to go with science, so it makes sense to people. And I like that too.
Yeah,
I
some
too.
sort of facts and figures, certainly in that corporate world, to say,
Yeah,
look, this will work, this will
absolutely.
benefit your team,
Yeah,
because companies are ambitious, companies have goals, and don't have anything wrong with that at all. But yeah, looking after your own team is incredibly important, and you're in there doing that. You
yeah.
mentioned about breath work as well. So do you do that alongside tapping or as a separate thing or
Yeah, I tend to mix the tapping and the breath work. So mix it together. Sometimes I just do one of the technique, but breath work is another one that is well. We hear a lot about breath work now. It's kind of out there, a lot more. And I found this technique when my grandmother died, because I was raised by my grandparents, and since I was 2, I was in their kinship care, and it really helped me to deal with grief.
Mm.
Because the breath work really taught me how to soften the grief. It will never go away. That's what I've learned. But it helped me to, oh, the only way I can describe it, softened it,
Okay.
because it was very hard and rigid. That's how I feel grief. And it softened it so I could actually breathe again. I could work again. I could think creatively again because I've chosen to do something with it, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. I helped the grief to softened.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense saying soften, and I think it's actually quite helpful sometimes to, almost label some of the emotions and
Mm.
things like that. I certainly know at my daughter's school, they talk about anxiety as this sort of prickly feeling, and things like that, because certainly for children, understanding what those feelings are can be particularly confusing.
Definitely. Yeah, I teach my daughter tapping, and sometimes she's like, "Oh, mum, stop it now." But she knows she knows about, how these feelings work and what do we do when we feel, a little bit, when she goes into the anxiety. So yeah, I teach her that. But yeah, the breath work is great also for productivity. If you want to feel more like, right, I'm ready to feel more uplifted. First thing in the morning when we wake up, we don't kind of go like, "Wah!" We feel a bit more like, bit still sleepy, sluggish, and that's because the body, I guess, doesn't have as much oxygen. So you can change that by doing 2-3 minutes of really radical breath work. So I do active breath work. It's a 3-part breath. You keep your mouth open, so you inhale a lot of oxygen, and that's really sharpens your focus. Like, you're not going to need coffee, because you'll feel so energized and so alive that you start to produce these elevating emotions, and you're like, right, I'm ready to tackle this task, because you feel energized. Your body's, yeah.
Ready. I love that. I had never really considered that. But yeah, of course, when you're sleeping, obviously your heart rate does slow, your breathing shallows. When you wake up, we want to get going, we want to do stuff, but actually our body's like, whoa, 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 I'm not ready for that. But actually some breath work can
Yeah,
help flood
can
you with
help you.
oxygen
Absolutely.
and get you saying,
You,
right, we're ready for the day.
yeah, get you ready. I do something called like I call it espresso shot. So what I do like 30-minute. I've done quite a few with a client in Somerset, and it just they were sending me feedback. They sent me feedback like, "Wow, this was incredible! Like, I've managed to do all my tasks. I feel so good and so energized." So it does really work. It's just great. It's great for so many reasons. It has so many good benefits, to your mental state, emotional state, physical, obviously, and it reduces the depression and, anxiety. But you wouldn't want to do, like, for example, if you're feeling stressed out, or when you're feeling really, no, let's say, yeah, like really agitated, I
Yeah.
wouldn't do the radical, very fast breath work, because it puts your body into even more stress. So for that, I would go for more like a box breathing,
Yeah.
bring yourself down, or do a little bit of tap. So they are great for different things.
different things. And that's, again, I guess,
Yeah,
understanding where you are at that time, what you need your
yes,
body to do, and looking after yourself. I guess that's probably one thing that we, in the past, maybe didn't do enough, and definitely people are becoming more aware of
yes.
breath work and being in touch. I mean, where did it all start, or where's it come from?
So the EFT was developed in 1970s by Craig Callaghan, and he was a psychotherapist, and he was treating this lady called Mary, and she had a phobia of water phobia, and he was treating her with the traditional CBT
Yep.
therapy, and he wasn't successful. But he was also acupuncturist.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that yeah? So one day he thought, let me try something else. So he was guiding her as she was saying, I feel sick when I'm thinking about water. And he was teaching her how to, he was like, right, let's do some, can you just tap here and tap there? And the phobia completely was gone. You can
Wow.
read up on it online, the history of tapping, but basically that's how it was developed. She completely was cured of phobia because it's the feeling. She had the feeling of, right. So if you could kind of work through that feeling, and also visually, when you're scared of spider, you're not really scared of that little tiny spider. It's the image that you create in your head. You feel like, oh my God, I feel scared. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
it
Because
does.
the brain will only communicate with us in pictures. The picture you create in your head and the words that you say to yourself, that creates then the feeling. The feeling creates the emotion. So if you can kind of work with the feeling, you changing then the thought, changing the images in your head. Oh, it's incredible. And you
Yeah.
can do this yourself. It's not a therapy, it's a skill, because everybody can do tapping or breath work. It's accessible, available to people.
And it's just understanding it. That's really interesting what you were saying about the way our brain communicates, and the pictures that it creates. And you're exactly right. Actually, you look at the fear of spiders, and okay, they might look a bit, but
Tiny.
quite often they're tiny.
What
Why
you
is my brain conjured that up? But it's the same for people when an email comes up or their phone starts ringing, or it's like, what actually is the fear here? This isn't a life and death situation, but our brain
Yeah,
obviously conjures up something,
yeah,
and the more we let it do it, I guess, like we were saying at the start, it's that
yeah,
repetition
yeah.
of the
Create,
brain then knows what to do.
yeah. And then you're not in charge anymore. Then
No.
the emotion will just turn on and off. Like it will just, you're just not in charge, because you've created this habit of that same emotion. It's and it's harder to then break through that cycle, but then it's never late to learn, okay, so I'm creating these images actually making me feel something, because they do. You think about worst case scenario, you're going to feel that. So if you
Mm.
can change the image in your head, bring the intensity down, you then the behavior is going to be also different. Does that make sense? So if you
It,
change the way you think and see the image, it brings the intensity of anxiety down, and then you actually create a different outcome, because you took charge of the image, the thought. I know it
but
might be a bit confusing,
no, it
but,
makes complete
but it's how
sense.
it all kind of works. So when people talk about mental health and you hear a lot about it, I'm like, but what about the emotions? Like, why don't we not look at that? The feelings, emotions, the thought. Why don't we just, I
and try and adapt those so that
yeah, because
actually
it's linked. The mental health,
Mm.
emotions, it's all linked. Well, in my head, it is.
Yeah.
I see it. You work with the, okay, I'm feeling this. All right, okay, then perhaps I need to, and that's because I'm thinking something that corresponds to that feeling. So I'm thinking something, it produces the same feeling. Okay, so let's start with the feeling. I'm feeling anxiety or whatever. Right. So maybe I need to create a different thought. And that's when visualization comes in as well. That's another one.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that goes back to where people have got fears of certain things from maybe a situation they were in. So, I've heard of it where, people have been on a bus and because there's been an incident or a fight, actually they're scared of getting on the bus. But it's actually because their brain's sort of reminding them of that situation and creating that picture that actually there's danger on there.
Totally.
But actually you need to change the picture that your brain
Absolutely. And
comes
that's
up with.
NLP, that's the neuro linguistic programming. That changed my entire world when I've learnt it. When I've come across it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to study this thing because it helped me to overcome my own trauma. So,
Mm.
and again, this is why I do this because um, I did found NLP therapist who helped me massively to kind of get over my trauma and change the images and all of that stuff. I felt like, wow, life is so different. I can see colors. I can really tap into my full potential now because I'm not trapped. And then I went off and studied NLP, become a master NLP, master of NLP, and um, yeah, it just changed my world completely. I can't
Do you think
remember
there's
now.
yeah, do you think there's a lot of people almost being held back by whether it's past beliefs or past situations and they haven't dealt with that and actually, people aren't reaching their potential because their brain is holding them back?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But I would hope more people are like waking up to these things and hopefully seeking more help. I mean, the clients I work with, I work mostly with corporates now and carers.
Yeah.
Um, um, but I also work not as much, but I have worked with one on one, so private clients who wanted to kind of tap into their potential where they really wanted to change their beliefs and that's all possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. You just kind of have to choose what you want to believe.
I like that. I
Really
like that
easy.
saying. Yeah. And then starting to repeat it so that your brain can learn it and
Yeah.
fix on that pattern.
We can. We've got the, neuroplasticity is all about that. Like we can change our brains. You can rewire your brain. You can what's the word? Create new neural pathways. So it is all possible. Yeah.
Brilliant. Just to finish off today, anyone who's listened and heard a bit about this, like what would be one thing you would recommend everyone has a go at or tries to discover, or would it be the tapping or the breathing? Or is it just, first of all, maybe understanding what the emotion is? What's someone's first step to improving themselves?
Yeah. So if you like the idea of or sound of the tapping, um, then I would say, yeah, get curious about, okay, how do I feel? When I'm first hit by the emotion, negative emotion, okay, you know, get curious, become aware of the emotion, and then you can start applying the tapping. It's very easy. There's so much stuff out there online how to do it. It's super fast. Um, And don't forget to acknowledge the emotion, because sometimes we don't really want to acknowledge what we're feeling. But that's the beauty of this tapping, is that every emotion needs to be acknowledged and then it can leave your body. It's a cycle, it's a science.
I
Every
love that.
emotion has a 90-second cycle, and that's it. 90 seconds. So you're hit by the emotion, it runs in your body for 90 seconds, and then the emotion does naturally will calm down. But it's us who bring the emotion back up again. Our ego.
Right.
Oh, I'm wondering
Okay.
what they said and why they said that. Maybe they don't like me. So we bring it up. So if you could do the tapping, it beautifully works to just cut through the pattern, acknowledge what you're feeling, and then let it go, basically.
Mm. I think that's really key, that acknowledging, acknowledging what you're feeling. And then you can start to,
Yeah,
change things for the
yeah,
better, because actually we benefit from this if we can do that and regulate our emotions much better.
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much for joining me today and chatting through that. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Tapping certainly something I'm going to give a go. But yeah, thank you once again for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.